I hope I'm pronouncing right, by the way, Ray. I think I do. Who's the founder and CEO of Demonsphere. Ray has a strong opinion. Everything is AI search. It's just a question of interface. And show you that he'll present you his conference bridging the two worlds of AI in traditional search on Google and beyond. So I'm sure that questions are already popping up in your head. So let's not wait any further. As usual, keep your comments polite in the chat, please. Respect each other and our speaker. You may ask your questions in the chat as the conference goes on. Ray will answer them at the end of the session. And to answer your main one right away, yes, there will be a replay of this conference later. And so now, here you go, Ray. Enjoy your conference. You may come up on stage.
All right. Thanks very much, Alexandra.
You.
I'm happy to be here. Sounds like the event has been going very well today. I know we've got a lot of awesome speakers, so I'm happy to be included and looking forward to everyone's questions. I'll spend a minute just introducing myself and my topic before getting into things. So we're going to be talking about this idea of bridging two worlds between AI and traditional search and what that means, how to do that. We're going to be talking about a lot of different data-driven examples of this. From some quick background, if you don't know me or anything that I do, I'm the founder and CEO of Demonsphere. We are a data analytics platform focused on SERP data and AI search data, and we move very quickly to adapt to all the crazy changes that are happening. I've been in the space for more than 18 years and basically come from a data engineering and software engineering background. So I love digging into all of this information, and the challenges that, what we work on every day is one of the things that keeps me motivated. So when we talk about AI search and the way this is portrayed, a lot of times you hear this dichotomy, which I kind of consider to be a false dichotomy. And so you hear about traditional search versus AI search. And typically what people mean when they hear that, they are talking about, okay, Google versus, new LLM based search. So ChatGPT, Perplexity, all those different things. And in our view, actually everything is AI search. Now, when Google was the first really to pioneer all of this, a lot of that gets, missed, I think, right now because there is such a focus on the new experiences. Really, it comes down to everything is AI search now, whether you're talking about Google and their SERPs, and obviously, recent innovations such as AI mode are a big part of that, but they've been leading the way with transformer architecture and large language models and everything else for years now. So we've really been in an AI search world for much longer than most people typically realize. And so in our view, it's less about, is it AI search or quote unquote traditional search? And it's more about, what does the search experience look like? How does that impact your users' behavior? How is that going to impact the type of decisions they make? How are they going to learn about you, your brand, and so forth? And in that context, really, we're talking about three primary search experiences, which are going to continue to evolve. Obviously, you have SERPs. Google is the largest SERP, destination. There's Bing, of course, and others as well. And then you have what we would all probably kind of call, like the Gen AI experience, the LLM experience. And then there's the agentic experience too, which is the new one. And we're not going to spend as much time on the third one today, but we're going to be focusing primarily on the first two, but it's all quite relevant. So on the SERP side of things, again, this is, in our view, very much an AI experience, and that's going to continue to be the case. AI mode is going to take over everything on the SERP, but at the same time, we're not going to see all of the billions of dollars of investment in all the different SERP features and elements go away. They're going to be integrated into what Google is doing as part of their overall AI strategy. And I would be remiss if I did not start with this as our primary discussion point. And really, this is probably one of the most famous slides in this industry right now. Obviously, Rand Fishkin put this together, and he's done a lot of great research on this. And we're a huge fan of everything he does. I do like to play a little bit of a devil's advocate on this slide sometimes, though, because one of the things that we try to emphasize is that the fact that we live in a zero-click world doesn't mean that there are zero clicks. It just means that certain types of search experiences are not likely to result in a click the majority of the times. Does not mean, though, that there are just zero clicks happening anywhere. We sit on a ton of data from all over the place, and I see clicks happening a lot. And we're seeing, in some cases, actually clicks increasing due to a variety of factors that we're going to talk about. And even if you dive into the, again, to play kind of a devil's advocate to this particular slide, if you do the math on this, you're still seeing basically, a click-through rate that is something like 30% for the top position, which, it's not really that far off from all the traditional click-through rate models. Now, the curve is going to look different, and in reality, when the type of click-through rates that we see all the time, they're all over the place. So these averages can wash out a lot of nuance that is very important, but clicks are still happening. So you still have to factor this in, and you need to be able to understand what that means. And this really dovetails into one of the major takeaways that we always try to drive home with our clients and audience when we're speaking with people, is that it's very important at this stage in particular, with things moving as fast as they are and us being in this time of transition to different types of search patterns and search behaviors. It's really important to keep multiple paradigms in our minds at the same time. So there's a tendency, especially when people are anxious about the changing traffic patterns and so forth. The tendency is to kind of engage in what we would call like dialectical thinking, where you create, a hard set of dichotomies where it's like, it's either this or it's that. And a lot of important detail can be washed out when that happens. And so we think that it's important to understand that things are much more complicated than a lot of these kind of dichotomies can present us with. So let's talk about what that means in a couple of different examples. One thing that we talk about quite a bit is the fact that we are ultimately talking about attention even more than we are talking about click-through rates, right? It's not really even about traffic, even though that's the one that everyone talks about. It's really about understanding the attention that you're getting. And attention is difficult to model because it's a very fuzzy thing, but you see it everywhere. And it's something that can be looked at from a number of different angles. And one of the most important angles that we think is important to use is understanding the shape of the SERPs, because these are, again, if you look at the numbers, the traffic, search volume, all of these are really just proxies for understanding relevance and what are the relevance of different types of elements, what are the relevance of different types of queries and topics that people are going to be affected by. And so being able to model that to one degree or another is a very important thing. And we view SERP features as attention magnets, essentially. And this is one of the reasons why, as there is this shift in the SERPs from what everyone refers to as the 10 blue links, 10, 15 years ago, to all of these SERP features, everyone was very, nervous about that too, because even though we talked about it in terms of traffic, it was really about what's going to take attention away from people coming to our website. And the name of the game really is understanding, given the fact that these landscapes are the way they are and that they're going to have a massive impact on user behavior, you need to understand very clearly where, when, and how this attention is going to be attracted to it, and how is that something that can be used to benefit your brand. So, excuse me, there's a lot of different ways of looking at this, but the SERP shape analysis is something that can be measured in one way by looking at things like pixel depth and visual rank analytics. And this is true. We're seeing it even with the AI mode tracking, which we enabled in our platform a couple weeks ago. And it's really, think of it as the heat map for SERPs, only you can't do it based on user mouse movements. It's based on predicting what that's going to look like based on the visual features that are impacting the vertical and hierarchical layout. And you can measure that and you get a lot of precise data around that. And that's going to have a pretty interesting set of insights that you can derive from that. And so this is one of the reasons why the teams that we see that are very successful do a really good job of understanding what they look like, even within the context of AI overview and AI mode and everything else, understanding where their pixel depth is overall. Are they above the fold? Are they below the fold? These are going to have very concrete impacts on user behavior. And you can take this even further. And again, going back to what I was talking about earlier, there is no way that Google is just going to abandon all of the investments that they've put into things like shopping results, popular products, all of that related to, of course, Merchant Center and so forth. You've got hotel ads, you've got job ads, you've got all, home service ads. All these different types of things are massive things that are not only organic. A lot of them are paid as well. And so one of the examples of what I would kind of call this dichotomy-based thinking is looking at things purely in terms of organic and SEO, when really this is a massive destination for users, people who are looking for something, and also the LLMs themselves. One of the things I'll be talking about a few minutes later is how much both Google and Bing are being used and indexed by the LLMs, because they are also building up their own indexes. And so all of this is like a gold mine to them. So being able to understand what we call the naked view of this, which basically means the unpersonalized view, the naked index, is something that I think is a very important data asset that can drive a lot of valuable decisions. And the personalized view of this is something that you can also measure too. And really it takes a good look at trying to combine these two things together to understand how your users are going to be affected at all the way down to the ICP level. The other thing that I think is really important when we're talking about bridging these worlds, again, of what, kind of, it's almost more like traditional mindsets versus traditional search and traditional ways of looking at things versus AI search. It's understanding more that we live in this world now and that things are changing faster than most companies can keep up with. The other thing that really helps to clarify a lot of this is building a unified view. And so we are big believers in building a unified view on data is one of the main things that we do at our company. And combining SERP data with Search Console data has been one of the key ways of doing that. And I'm going to walk through a couple of examples why and what that looks like. So I'm going to jump right into a concrete example. I have changed the names to protect the innocent here. So this is actually, I'm going to use TripAdvisor.com as an example, but this is not the actual client that we're talking about. But this exact scenario is something that we see very frequently. So we're looking at a SERP here where there is an AI overview, and they happen to appear in that AI overview in position 3 within that citation. They also are ranking, obviously, organically because they're a great site. Position 5 organically, but there's this concept called visual rank, which we look at basically, which is looking at your ranking when you take into consideration the SERP features. And so your visual ranking position there would be visual 9. So actually not very high up visually if you look only at the organic rankings. And pixel depth is something, again, we talked about briefly, but basically the idea behind pixel depth is you're measuring the number of pixels from the top of the SERP. And the good rule of thumb in understanding this, it does depend somewhat on overall user device profiles that you see. But in general, good rule of thumb is that every 1,000 pixels is going to be one fold or one scroll. And so in this particular case, the visual rank is at 2,100 pixels, well below the second fold. And so that means that visual rank, even though they're ranking in position 5, which may not be a bad rank, it's not a great position. And so the fact that they have a click-through rate on this particular query of 33% makes no sense if you're not looking at the AIO. And so obviously the obvious explanation is that likely those clicks are coming from the AI overview. And that's how we would model that out. The problem is if you're only looking at Search Console data, you would never even know that there is an AI overview on that page. You can assume based on this data that there maybe is, but there are things that you don't know about it. Who are the other sites in that citation? Why are you not in position 1? What would that look like? What is the pixel height of that? What is the impact on that? So there's a lot of information here that's not being included from the Search Console data only. And so this is one of the reasons why we believe it's very important to have a unified view across these sources. So from a data modeling, I try to provide examples that are going to be pretty generic and can be applied by anybody using any framework. We support all this natively, but you can, lots of different ways of doing this. If we are going to take kind of like a BigQuery model using Search Console's bulk export as an example, one way of modeling this out would be the two tables you see on the left hand side are the schema that Google uses for BigQuery's bulk export, and then the SERPs table is just kind of an example schema that I've put together. That would be one way of modeling some of this out, right? And so you could basically, whatever you're using for your SERP data collection, pipe that in, and that's going to allow you to do queries that would reveal these sorts of insights between the two tables. And so a lot of this stuff sounds kind of hard to implement, and there are challenges to do it from a data collection perspective, which is the reason we have our business. But there's conceptually, it's pretty easy to explain to people once you kind of walk through the nuts and bolts of what these things look like. And so being able to track this and monitor it will allow you to build things that can help you to correlate these different factors. And so one example of that is something that we would call unified visibility, because what it's really doing is it's looking at all of the Search Console data in context with all of the search data, and specifically looking at what does the things like click-through rate and so forth look like when specific search features are present or not present. And so the things that are going to be really interesting here is when you can see the correlation between pixel depth and click-through rate modeled together with the presence of search features. And this can be used to generate customized click-through rate curves for your site from your Search Console data directly. And this is something that is very important in my view. Still, weirdly, a lot of the click-through rate models are just like static based on public models, and it's kind of a hard problem to solve. But I think it's important to make this as custom and dynamic as possible. And this is something that can be exported directly from your Search Console data, and you can build it for your own site. And there's a lot of great things that you can do there. And my slides are getting away from me. Scroll back over. So basically, again, you're looking at this particular case study. The net conclusion that we came to is the fact that this is something that probably came directly from that AO traffic. So let's switch gears a little bit and talk about LLMs and GenAI search engine type experiences. Again, people are very quick to point out usually that the traffic from GenAI search is still a rounding error. Counterpoint to that is, and we see this literally every day, your board is breathing down your neck about your AI strategy, and your competitors are all over it. So you don't necessarily want to be resting on your laurels with this. And one of the interesting things about this reality now is whenever we have a conversation about GenAI with any prospect or client or partner or anything else, nobody asks about traffic. Nobody cares. And so that'll change over time. But right now, it's basically, we just know we need to have something around AI visibility, and that's the main thing that matters. I need to be able to go to the board and talk about this. And so all of the kind of rituals that we've been put through into traditional, quote unquote, traditional organic search modeling around click-through rate modeling and forecasts and all that stuff, all that just kind of goes out the window weirdly, because people are just trying to jump on this new thing. So it's partly about maturity, but I think it's also partly a recognition of the fact that, again, all of this was always about attention, and traffic was really just a proxy for a lot of that. So one of the things that we think is the most, probably there's a lot of insights, but one of the most actionable insights is index overlap. And this is something that we talk about quite a bit, which is that AI search still depends very heavily on the traditional organic indexes. I think most people here are going to understand this, but I'll walk through it very quickly just to get everything on the same page. So obviously, any time you're dealing with LLMs, you're going to have this stale content problem. You're going to have hallucinations because these are trained models that have outdated facts, and these are typically getting solved by grounding these responses with results from some sort of search engine. And typically that's going to be coming from one of the major search engines. Now, most people kind of assume that is going to be Bing most of the time because of the pretty well-known partnership between OpenAI and Bing in the case of ChatGPT. Some of the other engines as well. Obviously, Copilot is going to be using it. But actually in our data, and we're going to talk about this more here too, is we're seeing ChatGPT in particular really indexing Google even more than Bing. We're going to talk about some of those numbers, but this means that what they are doing is they are basically using these other search indexes to bootstrap the construction of their own index. And so what that means is, even though we think of 10 blue links as, like dead 10, 15 years ago, the index itself and everything that comes along with that is the prize for the next couple of years as they're building their own index. And so, like I said, we're seeing instances in a lot of our data where ChatGPT is using both Google and Bing for different queries. This is going to continue to evolve with things like query fan out and synthetic queries. And hopefully we'll have time to talk about that for a little bit. And what that means from a data perspective, we actually decided to analyze this. We looked at 17 different industries, looked at these 4 engines here. We looked at ChatGPT, Perplexity, Google, and Bing, and we basically ran the same queries and prompts for each one of those. And we saw that there's actually quite a bit of overlap between them. In the case of Google, in this particular study, there's actually Google is being used 50% of the time as the backing index for these chat responses versus Bing. And what that means is both from a share of voice perspective, you need to understand that the best way to impact your visibility and share of voice on these is understanding where the index is coming from. And we're going to talk, I'm going to skip that one because I want to jump about into here. So sorry, let me just go back a couple slides. It ran away from me. Yeah, so anyway, the thing to understand there really is that if Google is being used as a primary backing index for ChatGPT, what that means is that the best way to impact what your visibility is going to look like, at least over the next 6 to 12 months, is you're going to see opportunities arise just by improving your visibility in Google. We see this all the time in our data where you have the substandard ranking within Google, and your visibility is not what it should be there. And that very often gets reflected very quickly in ChatGPT as well. And we see the same thing. Bing is less common. We're actually, what we're seeing now, we're seeing a lot more, and sorry, the slides are a little bit out of sync here. It looks like some of the slides didn't make it in, but we're seeing actually an evolution now where their ChatGPT is using a lot more of their own independent index more and more. And we believe that that's happening because they've learned a lot already from the indexes that they're seeing. And I think also there's some prediction going on where ChatGPT is basically predicting what the results would be. So they don't necessarily have to do a live retrieval of Google every single time. But from a foundational perspective, we're seeing them being used very heavily. We're seeing even shopping results and other search feature results creep into this data as well. So I think that staying on top of that and being able to get the full picture of those is going to be very important. So in terms of quick takeaways, we're going to be talking, one of the things that we always say that I've harped on quite a bit today is that it's not really traditional versus AI search. It's all AI search, and it's more about understanding the difference between traditional ways of approaching this problem versus understanding that it's a holistic system and that we need to be engaging in multiple paradigms. Attention is the real thing that we care about. Traffic is still there. Clicks are still there. I see it every day, see it all the time. So if you hear someone telling you that there's no more traffic at all, that may not be a fully accurate statement, because there's actually a lot of cases with our clients, we see even growth in traffic and growth in clicks. And I think a lot of it's coming from those search features that we talked about earlier. And really, the more you can integrate all the different available data sources, the more likely you are to be successful with the unified view that we were talking about earlier. So that is the primary part of my presentation. I see some questions coming in, so I'm going to see if there's any time for going into those. And this is a survey that they would like you to fill out as well. So let me review a few of these questions. So Nick brought up a really good point. He said also these studies often don't show the queries they are using. So that changes things around. So I think this is in the context of click-through rates and traffic and so forth. And so there's a lot of things happening that aren't even getting revealed in Search Console, right? We know that the data has holes all over the place. Yep. So that was a good one. And then another question here. Are they actually going to throw away all the keywords that worked and just work pretty? Yeah, so I think one of the biggest shifts that is happening right now, especially with topics related to query fan out and so forth, is that there's going to be this decoupling between the thing that you specifically query versus what they want to tell you about and what they're going to curate for you as a result. And we're seeing this obviously in the context. We've talked a little bit about query fan out, but we're all kind of used to this. I think looking at, even People Also Ask Data is an early version of this in my view. So this is going to continue to be the case where we're going to get, there's going to be what we ask and there's going to be what we end up getting results for that may be somewhat different from what you actually asked. And William said traditional SEO is about traffic and AI SEO is about visibility, like attention. I think there's another good way. And then Sarah said, did the other speaker say that ChatGPT was indexing Bing more than Google? So again, I think this depends on the result set that you're looking at and how you measure it. We're looking directly at the way we're doing it is we're looking at the index overlap percentage. So what we're doing is we're going out to ChatGPT, going out to Perplexity, and then we're looking at the SERPs, the citations that come back, and then we're running that same query for Google and for Bing, and we're seeing what the overlap percentage is. And so there's no black boxes or anything. It's literally just looking at what is the overlap percentage. And so in our data sets, we're seeing a pretty high correlation between those, and Google's being used more than Bing is. So this can change depending on the queries, and it's already starting to change even in our own data over time, where it's even less about Google and Bing and more what we would call classify as independent, which means they've built up their own index for certain things. And then, so there's same kind of question. So again, I think it's a way that you interpret the data, but in our view, if it's literally the same set of results that are coming back that match the citations, at our view, we look at that as there's overlap there. And a couple of other related questions. Yeah, we talked about how do you even check what search engine AI is using. We talked about that. And any other questions on this topic? I don't want to gloss over anything. Yeah, Lee brought up a great point. Is it not safer to just ensure you're well indexed on both to make sure there's not a problem with AI LLMs? So I think that's the way to go. The problem is, in many cases, there's, especially with a lot of enterprise teams, they're always dealing with questions of prioritization and how do you focus on getting budget and getting approval for working on things. So smaller teams that can, work fast and do things like that, it works. There's a lot of bureaucracy in politics. So it's not always that easy. Okay. Please show the takeaways one more time. We're going to be sharing, I'll go back quickly here in a second too, but we're going to be sharing all this as well. That was a question from Paul. And yep, this is a great point. I think it is because clicks are measurable, but attention is hard to measure. Yep, very hard to measure. And so again, you kind of need to understand, how do you characterize this within your own company? What's going to serve as a metric that kind of passes the BS filters that people have, and you want to be very concrete about this as much as possible. So in our view, share of voice models are a really good way of measuring that. The pixel data is another really good one because you understand intuitively that users are going to be responding to things that are more visible and prevalent in front of them. And so Lee brought up another really good point here. It says attention equals conversion activities or key events that you designate. And so this is another one too, where from understanding how the the financial modeling is happening, even conversions aren't always looked at as the most relevant thing. We're seeing, especially for larger companies that are doing things like media mix modeling, they're looking at very simple inputs and outputs in terms of what is our spend and what is our revenue. And so understanding how that's getting looked at and to what degree of sophistication you have and measuring that across the team, that can be easier said than done sometimes, but in general, yes, I think this is a great point. Bing doesn't own ChatGPT. Another question, where do LLMs get their information? Seems nuanced based on what I'm reading. So there's just like the whole internet. This is as much information as possible. They're always, adding in more. There's massive corpus of books and everything. So it's being used, it's indexing quite a bit. And really, one of the other cases that we make quite a bit that I didn't talk about today also is there's a lot of questions around should we be blocking these LLM bots because they're stealing all of our content? And yeah, they are. But I don't think you should block them because you're not blocking Googlebot, and we see already that they're getting data from Googlebot and from Google results too. So I think I am getting the call for the last few minutes here. So Alexandra, how are we doing on time?
You're doing just great. You have
Okay.
10 solid minutes. So if you
Okay.
have
All right.
any questions,
All right.
fire away. And if not, well, we can conclude it a bit earlier and people will have a bit of a longer break.
Yep. So David said you skipped over the source of LLM's knowledge. Perplexity doesn't use Google Index. So, I mean, again, it's how do you look at the data? In the overlap indexing data that we're looking at, we are seeing it. And I think it's more than just a coincidence that there is such an overlap in these result sets, especially when you look at even very similar ordering. But this is one of the reasons why we don't make this analysis a black box in our system. It's because it doesn't make any sense to make it, there's no, it just is what it is. You can, you decide to look at it that way or not. But for us, it's been very interesting because it allows you to prioritize how you do things. And we've actually run a number of tests where you're creating content and focusing on getting indexed for things in these engines, and very quick results appear in ChatGPT, and Perplexity as well. So I think we're at this stage now where there's a lot of experimentation that's necessary, and gathering as much data, as you can. This quote, Perplexity AI does not use Google's engines. I just don't buy it. Maybe it's something where we disagree, but what I'm seeing is this. We're seeing the data that we're seeing. So it's one of those very interesting points of debate. Let's see what other questions we have here. So this is an interesting one. Given the amount of content on the web, will it be possible to affect results? Yeah, it will. We see this definitely. And again, I think that if I know you're kind of a skeptic on this topic, which is fine, but I think that in the results that we've seen customers be very successful with this. And the live retrieval is actually kind of the way to shortcut a lot of this as well. If we only depended on the foundational models getting updated with this, then you would be kind of limited to their update frequency. But given the fact that live retrieval is a thing and that we know that new content is being indexed all the time, definitely you can affect results with new content. There's a good question from Grace about what is your view of impact on brand visibility in SERPs. So this is a question that comes up a lot. And it's interesting because we are getting lots of requests about doing mention tracking within SERP, like SERP features, specifically AIOs and AI mode and so forth. And so that's just, part of our visibility tracking. But I think it really shows the evolution in the way that things have changed over the last 6 months to a year. We never used to get this kind of request. It was always just about, what is, like numerically, what is your visibility? And now it's much more of these softer kind of mention, text matching, sentiment and that sort of thing. So this is going to continue to be a factor, and we will, I think we'll see a lot more of this. Tricky part is it's GPT versus BARD or Gemini versus AGI, logical application, and are different, and SERP may hit a dead end. I think so. What's going to happen ultimately over the SERPs is we're going to see all of it, basically anything that's happening with AI mode that's going to take over the SERPs. And so what we're going to see is really going to be the SERP data itself is just going to be consumed by these types of responses. And we're going to see lots of different, quote unquote, what we would today call SERP features within AI mode itself. Directly from Google, but Google, yep. Rachel, I agree with you. David, yep, all good. And then, can you somehow utilize zero clicks? AI overviews seem to lower traffic on your website. So again, I think this one you really need to look at your data. That case study, that little mini case study that I presented earlier, is really important to start looking for these types of patterns in your site because you may be getting more clicks and traffic than you would, may have thought otherwise. And So I think it's worth looking at. And then there's a related question around what is the average click-through rate for ChatGPT. So this is a good question because there's not great ways to answer this, but you could potentially start to do some of it. One would be, how accurately are you tracking your traffic from the LLMs? So there are things you can do within Google Analytics, for example, to get this. And so if you have a baseline understanding of what your traffic looks like, and you're also measuring your citations, and you understand what your overall share of voice or visibility within the citation looks like, you could start running some numbers. I don't know if you're going to be able to build out like a full click-through rate at this stage because the traffic volumes are still so low. But it's interesting to start looking at, I think, some of that stuff. As of today, obviously, there's nothing like a search console within ChatGPT. I've heard rumors that they may be changing down the road, but we'll have to wait to see on that. But I think that's a great question. Do you think the shift would make it easier or more difficult for smaller brands to increase visibility? This is, I mean, right now the deck is very strongly stacked against smaller brands in general. That's definitely true. That bias, we see that within Google. I think the same is true within ChatGPT. But really, the key on this one is this is largely because they're looking a lot more now at offsite, like third-party mentions as well. So, you're going to have to do a lot of the type of work that what would have traditionally been looked at as backlinks and so forth. Now it's, everyone's talking about how it's more about mentions and so forth. And that's very true. And there's just kind of like an overall curating effect that happens across the web on this stuff. So building those relationships in your part of the community and with your audience members and doing things that are remarkable enough to attract attention out there is going to be a key part of this strategy. Agents everywhere. Yeah, so this is one we didn't have time to talk about too much today, but this is going to be, I think, over the next 6 to 12 months. We all get kind of biased in our space because we see things happen so quickly, but most people are just not even aware of this concept. But we're going to see a lot of really interesting evolution over this. Yeah, very selective. Agreed. How to accurately track all this information. This is what everyone's kind of focused on right now. It's a moving, there's a lot of stuff happening. This is something we're very focused on at our company. There's a lot of great platforms out there that are doing as well. David, you asked a great question about local content as well. Yeah, so a boost, again, this is going to come down to, we are seeing a lot of local type of results, both at the country level and at city level and so forth as well. So I think you're going to start to see a lot more of this too. Obviously within Google itself, we would expect that. And Janet's asking a similar question. Yeah, we're starting to see even within ChatGPT and Perplexity, all kinds of local things happening, whether it's, features within the chat response and so forth. So I think we're pretty much at time, but
I am pretty much, and I think people are done with their questions.
Yeah, a lot of great questions.
Yeah, great questions. Thanks a lot, Ray. It was really interesting. Thank you so much for taking so much time for all the questions you had. It was really, really interesting, really refreshing in the way you approached the subject, I thought. I hope people in the chat enjoyed it as much as I did. It was really, really cool. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thanks very much.
So I guess this closes the session. It's time for a quick break before the